What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 37 of Nintendo Noise, Flipscreen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Chuy Plays.
Bye, goodbye.
What's up, boys? It's good to be back. I'm here. Don't worry. The show can continue. I know last week you must have just been scrambling without me. Just a dumpster fire of a program. But I have come back to just take those reins and make sure that, you know, the ship is gonna straighten up and sail right. So don't worry.
We had a grand old time. Chewy stole my opening. He said hello, hello instead of goodbye, goodbye, and I didn't even clock it until I was like editing the episode.
I did.
He even makes like a little like look at the camera as if to go, what I just did.
You got it. That's hilarious because I'm imagining Chewy doing that and no reaction. He's like, motherfucker, like I had this great bit, you know?
Sierra asks like later in the episode, did you say goodbye, goodbye? And he's like, no, I said hello, hello. And I'm like, somehow still washed over me. It was great. Oh yeah, it was a whole thing. But yeah,
I love to play characters. When I get the chance to be someone else, I do it.
That's the
so
thing.
You were playing me. But yeah, we still went to you as like the pro Splatoon player, so yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep. I was
think that just means
spraying
I'm
it
good
up.
at
Which one do you play again? Aerospray?
Splushamatic.
Oh, that's so embarrassing. Stop. That is not the weapon to play.
That's so embarrassing.
Play the Splash. Splash is actually respectable.
The one with the little needle nose. That one's
Yeah,
okay.
because it's got no shot deviation, no RNG with that, so it's actually it's the most accurate shooter.
You know,
I liked the splashdown because when I was playing against people that
Nobody
were not
likes
very
that
good,
one.
it was great. But now I play against people that are good because I'm bundled usually with you and I'm playing. I get shot out of the air every single time and it's impossible.
I know, Chewy, I know you've said that you don't feel like you have the skills to be a pro Splatoon player, but I feel like I could see you being like a coach, you know? Like, I feel like, you know, you could yell at people, break them down and build them back up. And, you know, it's like, that's a garbage choice. You're a garbage player. You're better than that. I feel like you got it in you, buddy.
I love yelling at people. I like the trash talk part of competition the best. That's probably my favorite part of it.
It's honestly my favorite character trait about you, like the more we've known each other, because like I feel like if you're like a outside casual, it's like, oh, Chewy, he's so sweet, you know, he loves these cozy games, he loves cute stuff, but like he'll fucking choke the life out of you in a competition if he's gotta, you know, like he doesn't care, he'll go right for the throat, and I respect that, you know.
I love playing games, and I love messing people up. That's it.
I thought you were going to say taking names. We're talking about Reggie later today. You were right there, buddy.
I know, true.
Yeah, we can't take Reggie's catchphrase, like the title of his book that it should have been, like, come on, Reggie, what are you doing? Like, disrupting the gaming industry. It was like a shit title.
Dude,
taking names is way better.
You couldn't have paid me not to call that book taking names and making games.
Taking names.
Like, that's 100% what it should have been called. But speaking of people that love playing games and taking names, let me remind you that this episode of the Flipscreen... Oh, no, wait, of Nintendo Noise. I was away for a whole week, and I almost... Anyway, this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of May. They are, of course, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Mary Berry, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all are the realest of the real, and we appreciate your support of this fine program. Speaking of, if you want to show your support, head over to the Patreon. There's a bunch of things, a bunch of good goodies you can get over there, including our exclusive show, One More Thing, where this week we talked about my vacation to Walt Disney World. You can also get early access to this and our sister show, Flipscreen Games, as well as a bunch of other cool little perks and goodies. So go check it out. Show your support if you're so inclined. If you don't have any money to toss our way, but you still want to get involved, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to our Discord, the email address to write in and get your thoughts read on the air, and a bunch of other good stuff. Wherever you're getting your video game content, we're probably out there making some stuff for you. So make sure you go and check it out. Show your support. However you choose to do so, We appreciate you. Thanks for coming and being here and being a part of what we're doing. So, I want to start things off. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today, all right? A very varying amount of topics, but we're going to kick things off by discussing the latest piece of Nintendo software that's gotten dropped. It's been getting a lot of buzz these last couple days. Nintendo Switch Sports is here. Chuy has been playing it. We're going to hear from him. But before that, we're going to get in the time machine and go back to the magical time of 2006, right? When the Nintendo Wii came out and developed motion controls for a whole new audience of gamers, there was a story that was really, really taking a lot of attention during those early days of the Wii. And that is, of course, while people were playing Wii Sports, the predecessor to Switch Sports, they were regularly losing control and throwing their Wiimotes through their televisions, which, of course, led to the development of the wrist straps that, became...
No, they came with wrist straps, but do you remember there was a class action lawsuit that they weren't strong enough and they broke?
Oh, that was the thing? I thought they didn't exist initially.
No, and then they sent out new ones to anyone who bought like an early one with like slightly thicker string on them.
That's even better.
And then on top of that, it came along with the fucking jackets for the Wii remote. Remember those stupid rubber things that they sent out in the post to everyone? To, like, if it did somehow break and come out of your hand,
it would bounce.
It's going to bounce off the TV somehow.
I'll tell you what, those things were gross. Okay, anybody who actually used those, they skeeved me out because it's like, oh, good, great. Now you have this rubber thing to collect all the grime and dirt off your hands, and your sticky little kids touching them. Nasty. Truly nasty.
Parents made children use those because they saw the news and all of the like Fox News reports of TVs broken everywhere and Nintendo getting sued.
So, as we know, history often has a way of repeating itself, and funny enough, this is one of those times. So there are a bunch of reports now of folks, and you can see if you're watching on YouTube, I've got an example you could look at here that was trending on Reddit earlier today. Folks are doing it again. They're not putting on their wrist straps, and they're tossing their Joy-Cons right at that screen, and people are breaking them. We're breaking a lot of TVs again here with the Nintendo Switch and Switch Sports. So,
Let me tell you,
imagine the carnage that's going to happen when people put the leg strap on and start kicking things.
Oh, I don't know.
The leg strap's pretty good though.
But like they're going to be, there's children running around the living room playing football and kicking things. Something's going to get kicked and hurt.
It might, that's for sure.
I've been playing it, right? And there's like very clear warning and images and instructions, and they're like, specifically look at the end of your Joy-Con strap where there's this little lock mechanism. Click that. Like, they are trying to cover their bases with this, just so like even if it slips out of this wrist strap or something, the Joy-Con doesn't go flying still toward the TV. And so I was just like, oh wow, I totally forgot this thing even had a lock. I didn't remember that at all.
Since like the first week I had a Switch. I just never get them out.
Nobody cares.
I've never used the straps on. Like, what the hell? How am I gonna do that? Like, they're too modular. They're always connected to my Switch. I'm taking them on. I'm taking them off. Like, no way.
Sure.
But word to the wise on this one. It's like I was just showing a video too of there's a streamer who broke their monitor while they were playing. Like, it's a common problem here. So, PSA, use those wrist straps, okay? So,
have you broken anything yet?
Bare minimum.
That was my question, Chuy. You've been playing the game. Are you using your wrist straps? Have you broken anything yet?
I have not broken anything, but I have also been using the wrist straps, but not because the game tells me to. It's because I have the cute Animal Crossing Joy-Con, and they actually look really good with those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got that nice string on there and everything. It was so good.
So not function, it's all fashion with you.
It's all fashion over function. I'm just like, look
I
at these
always like
colors. They're so
The
good.
Pikachu and Eevee ones as well, like the brown and the yellow, and it like offset, like fully creates the colors of the Pokemon when you put the wrist
Yeah.
strap on.
Yeah. So because my controllers are pretty, then yeah, I've been inspired to use them. But I will say like we we have our couch, we have a little glass table in front of the couch and then TV, that's kind of our setup in the living room. And we're playing in front of the glass table, so just like a little bit of space between us and the TV. And I was like, "Hey, Jackie, you want to play some bowling?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'll try it out." And so we're bowling, and she's getting into it, and I'm like, "You get mighty close to the TV there when you swing." So, though the Joy-Con wasn't flying out of her hand, I'm still worried that just like that distance is gonna cause some trouble at some point.
Just cut cut to them playing later, and she was Jackie, wrist straps, wrist straps.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's just like literally her arms like flying right by the TV when she's swinging. She's
Oh
like, if I throw
man.
it harder, maybe I'll get a strike. And I'm like, I don't know if it's doing anything.
So, fears about
They're
breaking your
like
television aside, how are you liking the game?
I'm enjoying it. I mean, so thus far, I kind of like went into the single player mode. Didn't really do online at first, but I mostly just was like, I'm gonna hop into these games, see how the motions go, how they all play. So I went through each game once. I think soccer is the clear standout for me, or football if you're overseas. It's just like I saw somebody compare it to what's it called? That game that's never coming to Switch anymore. Fall Guys. The Fall Guys like soccer game. And I was like, it is that. It's just a bunch of people running randomly at this giant soccer ball on the field and yeah, it's really fun. The first game I played, I just did a header and it scored a goal immediately, and then that was the only goal scored the whole time, so we won, and I was like, cool, this feels
how
good.
do you do a header? Do you have to
Okay.
like use a motion?
Yeah, so basically one your left um Joy-Con, you kind of just control your player, you run around and everything. And I think that's why it's really a standout for me. Like there's a lot more control for your character in this game in general. So one Joy-Con, you're controlling your character moving around. The other Joy-Con, you can use the buttons for different things, but they're usually just like call-outs. Like there's one that says here, and people can pass it to you. I think if they hold ZL or ZL is
Okay.
dash, ZR
I
is like pass. And
I
then
don't
to
know why, but
actually,
I thought this was gonna be like just like penalty shootouts. I didn't think you were actually gonna be running around and playing a game, like
yeah,
passing the
I
ball
think
to other people and stuff.
I think what they showed off was like a shootout kind of thing, but they did, but the actual game itself is like you're playing the game and you're running around and you're kicking and you're trying to defend the goal and everything. It's like, backyard Rocket League, I would call it. Like those backyard sports games, but this one's Rocket League or
God, I
something.
love those. Backyard
Yeah.
baseball was my jam.
Yeah, so with actually kicking, if you swing the Joy-Con to the left, you're going to kick toward the left. If you swing it to the right, you're going to kick to the right. And this is all on the right Joy-Con. If you swing it downward, you're going to kick it kind of low and straight ahead of you. If you swing it upward, you're going to kick it high and straight ahead of you, basically. And I think there is some like variation depending on like how you move everything and that sort of thing. But for the most part, those are the directions. And then, yeah, the only real control you get from there is like if you hit ZR, you can pass it to your teammate that just said here, and it'll kind of
Okay.
direct the ball in that direction. Um, the other cool thing that it has is like little on-screen call-out emoji things where basically you just hold R and then click either any of the Joy-Con buttons on the right, and you can like right now, I only have 4 emotes because I haven't unlocked the others. It's kind of random. I'll get to that. But one's like clapping, one's a little smiley music note, and then the other one is a thumbs up from your player. And then the last one is like a little you're crying. You're just sad because things went wrong. And so I spam those the entire game. It's so fun.
Sounds
Um,
like they're maybe like the stickers in Mario Party Superstars.
exactly. Yeah. It's like the stickers, but you have less options available at any given time. Like it's only four. It's only the four on those buttons. But otherwise, the same thing. You can unlock more as you go. And as far as unlocks go, like once you start playing online, you start building up a score for your character. And every time you reach 100 points, you unlock a random item. There's 2 pages to pick from at the moment. And I mean, I guess I'm trying to get them all. I guess they change on a weekly basis, but it hasn't been a week yet. So I'm just trying to get the rest of them that I need. But I also just unlocked like the pro mode, which is like more of a ranked mode for things. And I've only unlocked that in one of the games. I think you have to win several times in each of them to unlock them. And I've really been focused on the soccer, so that's where I spend most of the time, honestly. So I've unlocked it there. I've gone from E rank to E plus. So it's
Wow.
it's
Okay.
gonna take a
I
while
mean,
to
a
get
long,
to the
arduous
top.
process to get up to X rank then.
Yeah, I think right now it goes to like A plus, but yeah,
Yeah.
once they add X rank, I'll definitely go for that. But yeah, like I've been having fun with it, honestly. Jackie was like, she had a good time. She was like, "Oh, this isn't too bad. I can just bowl a little bit." But I mean, like, nobody's ever had trouble getting into Wii Sports bowling, and it's that. So,
Well, I have a question specifically about the bowling because I know you've played Clubhouse games. How does
mhm.
it compare to Clubhouse games bowling?
You know what? The funny thing about Clubhouse Games bowling is that I keep just playing Mancala, so I never played the bowling.
Right. Okay.
I play Mancala, Ludo, Dominoes, and Last Card, which is their Uno
Uno.
clone,
Yeah.
right?
So we need to get Jackie on the show to find out the comparisons
Yeah,
between.
yeah. We should play bowling on. I guess if you get Switch Sports, we could play bowling on that, and then we'll play. Well, we can definitely play bowling. We should stream it. Clubhouse Games bowling.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, I guess, with like looking at the critical response to the game. It seems to have netted out about where I thought it might, right? Where it's like the more positive reviews kind of top out in that like 8.5 if you're really generous, and
hmm
then the more common seems to be in that like 7.5 rate. It's got a 74 on Metacritic right now based on 55 critical reviews. How do you feel about that? Because you're saying you're having a lot of fun with it. It definitely
hmm
helps that, like, or I'm assuming it helps to have Jackie to play it with because it definitely seems like a game that's more fun to play with others than not.
hmm
I'm interested to hear what you think about that score because I think going into the announcement of this game, that was kind of the thing I was most concerned about is, I think as much as everybody remembers Wii Sports really fondly, I think a lot of that success has to do with it being a pack-in title and not a game that the average player wasn't expected to spend full price on it. And this game
hmm
feels like one of those Nintendo games where it's like, you're really getting away with charging $60 for this, huh?
They don't for the digital version though, do they? Like, isn't that one slightly cheaper because you don't get the leg strap?
I think so. I think it was. Is it a $60 game even with the leg strap
Let me
though?
take a
I want to
look.
say it was still 50.
I'll take a look, but go ahead and answer. How do you feel about that critical response, and then I guess the value
hmm
prop for what you've gotten out of it so far?
I think when I look back at my time with like Wii Sports, I definitely had fun with it, but I also didn't feel like it was a game that had a lot going on. Like there weren't too many things to really dig into, and I think overall, like even back then, the fun of the game came from like so many people being able to easily pick it up and play with each other, and whenever you're playing games with friends, I think that's going to make your experience with a game better, regardless of what the game is.
For
Like,
sure.
it could be a terrible game, but your friends make it better. And
Yeah.
so, thus far, with Switch Sports, the thing that I do like about it that I feel does take it at least a little bit further and makes it more interesting than Wii Sports is that, like, on a weekly basis, there's going to be new prizes for you to earn. And so there's like incentive to go back and keep unlocking those because right now it's all like aesthetic stuff, like your character
Sure.
customization stuff. It's all outfits and things. And right now I'm like, my character looks dumb. I want to get like cooler things. And even like the stuff that's available this week, I'm like, it's fine. It's like I'm there. I will be excited when it's something that I really do want to wear and everything. So
Sure.
I think that aspect of it, on top of like them having like a ranked system for each game as well, I'm like, okay, so there's like at least like a continuous loop for people who do get into any one of the games. I think where I fall here is like I'm most into the soccer right now, and it's mostly because I do find it to be like the most active of the games. It's like team based. There's a lot of controls to it in order to play and stuff. It's not just like you aim, you swing, and that's like your round. Which is bowling, which is fun, but it's also like after so much of that, I'm only going to be so engaged, right?
Right.
Mm.
But where I'm saying the problem is here is that like Mario Strikers is going to come out and I'm just going to drop off because I want to play Mario Strikers instead. Like that seems like it'll be more of the arcadey soccer experience that I want.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And to answer the question from before, physical version is $50 US and the digital is 40. So a little cheaper.
Okay,
Yeah.
slightly cheaper. Yeah.
Um,
In the UK though, it's on sale on Amazon at the moment, $32.99, which
That's
actually
not
seems
bad.
like a pretty decent deal. The thing is though, like they've launched this, it's missing one of the standout games at launch. There's no golf in there. I know that's coming, and the golf
Yeah.
looks like that could really be like the killer like application for it. You get to play a full 18 holes of golf.
hmm
Um,
Yeah.
but you've
But
got
but
Mario
I also
Golf
worry
as
about
well,
that
so it's
one.
just yeah.
I worry about that one too with like Mario Golf Super Rush being out there and also having its own like motion control mode in that.
Hmm.
So it's like this exists. I can see why they like delayed it. There's like not too much of a need for it to be included on there yet. Um,
yeah, I don't.
yeah,
I
I was
just
gonna say the game I'm missing though is boxing. I
that was a lot
loved
of fun.
boxing. Either give me another motion control punch out like Wii Punch Out because that was really fun, or some other boxing game. I stayed up way too late playing Wii Punch Out with my brother one Thanksgiving, and we were sore afterwards.
It was always bowling and tennis for me. They were the two that we always played, and they're there.
hmm
So if I want to have
Yeah,
that trip down nostalgia lane, they're there. I'm curious, are you playing with the new sports mates, or have you gone for nostalgia and you're using your me?
I am doing the Sportsmates because they are the ones that you can use the outfits with. I don't think the Mii's can use like all of the aesthetic things, and I'm like,
Kind of weird that
why
they're even
not?
there then.
Yeah, like it feels like it's kind of pointless to have you just don't get any of the benefit from it, which I already said is like the standout for me, where it's like, oh, every week there's new stuff to work toward.
Mhm.
But if you don't have
And
that with the
that's
Mii's,
you as a player, right? Because that's what hooked you in with WarioWare when a lot of people dropped off. It was the continuous rising up the ranks, something new every single week, bringing you back. I think if
hmm
they can continue to do that, maybe do like tournaments where there's like physical prizes or like rewards like they do with Tetris 99. I think it could have some success, but this is going to never reach the astronomical heights of Wii Sports, I don't think.
No, and
yeah,
I think for a lot of reasons, right? And before we get too
hmm
far away from it, I do just want to take this opportunity to like hit a quick drive by against Mii's. Society has evolved beyond the need for Mii's. All right, Nintendo, it's been 2 generations. Retire them. Just retire
I
they're
them.
think
they're
if they could say the next generations of Mii's look as good as the sports mates in Wii Sports, I'd be wholly on board. Like those
hmm
characters can go and play in like all sorts of different things. Like if I could have took that sport mate into Clubhouse games, and that could have been my character that I play all the games with there. Like I'm playing Last Card, and I can see everyone else's sports mates around. Like that's a system that could have worked really well. But they're using the same Mii's, and granted, in Miitopia on the Switch port, they did upgrade it. It's the same system since like 2005, and it really is showing its age at this point.
And do you all remember that like Twitter thread where somebody was like analyzing how the Mii's were used to design like Zelda characters in Breath of the Wild?
Yep.
And I'm like, I mean, get them at least to that level. Like the Miitopia stuff was great. Like there was so much customization and stuff that people could pull off with it. But like, I don't know, they need a glow up for sure. I think the sports mates look pretty cute already. I know a lot of people are like, oh, this looks like Xbox Connect thing, and I don't know, like all of their little
the old avatars on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, I'm like, have you looked back at those lately? Like these are kind of cuter, like way cuter.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what though, Xbox had a lot of good licensing deals. So like my little guy, I had like a Spider-Man T-shirt on, loved that.
I had Converse, like actual Converse.
It's pretty good.
They were great.
Yeah, I wish like Nintendo would go for more of that with their like silly lifestyle-ish types of games like Wii Sports, where they're just like, let's just like celebrate the brand in here, like just fan service all over the place. Just give them all of the cool like Mario merch that people want and stuff. Because I do think they've stepped away from that in like Animal Crossing, for example. Like there is some Mario stuff now, but like they used to have tons of Nintendo things in Animal Crossing, and now that they don't, I'm like, we need a replacement for that.
It's
I
a
feel
bummer.
Like, yeah, we need another little game where we can like virtually also be indoctrinated into this brand, you know?
Definitely. But to take it back to the point that Steve had made, I also feel that way. I feel like this game is like kind of doomed, if I'm honest, to be like more or less DOA. Like maybe we'll get a surprise and we'll see that it sold better than expected, but I don't know. Like it feels like too little, too late. Like if you were gonna do this as a sequel, like it probably would have felt better.
Like a year one title, year one, year two, and that like lull. Like if it was year two in that lull period where we'd got the big hitters out, we got the Zelda game and we got the Mario game, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do? Let's do a Wii Sports like successor and bring it out. I think it would have done so well that year.
I think that from what I feel we've seen from Nintendo, I think their big focus at the beginning of Switch was like get gamers back into Nintendo. Like that every release they had up until these like past 2 years felt like more core gamer audience type of experiences, and it seems like now they're like bringing out all of those little side quirky titles, and because they're running out of that audience to sell the Switch to. Like we're about to see the numbers of how many Switch consoles have sold, and I'm sure they're like at the point where they're actively trying to spread that and grow that into more of the, I guess, general audience,
Yeah, and like I respect that, and I think there's clearly an audience that wanted this game, but it feels to me like if I'm being, and grain of salt, I haven't played the game, but like if I'm being honest, it feels very akin to like all of the missteps that they've taken with the Mario sports titles, right? Where it's like these are things that appeal to more casual players and they have potentially a bigger reach, but like they've been half baked, right? Like Tennis All-Stars was not great. It was pretty middling. It was pretty light on content. As much as you and
I've heard from some people though say that if it had come out now with all the content that's in there, it would have been like way
more enjoyed now.
But that's the thing is like that's too little too late, right? Like you can't come out and put out a half-baked version of the game and then bring out content later and think that that's going to make the difference. Because like
I think you can if you explain that that's your strategy, like they did with Splatoon 2. Like Splatoon 2 strategy was you're getting these maps at launch, and then these ones are going to come, and then we're going to do the same with Smash, right? It was
I think
we're
that's
going to do a
different,
Fighters
though.
Pass.
Because, like, Splatoon is, you're right, but I think Splatoon, you have that expectation because it's a live service game, right? And the idea of being like, okay, yeah, it's going to launch with a limited number of maps, and then more maps will come, more game modes will come. Go ahead, sorry.
But it's their only live service game in that regard. So it was interesting that this was like the first one that they'd ever really tried it with. And it's really the only one that they've ever succeeded in this strategy with. Like Animal Crossing, yeah, they did add content over time, but people were buying that game in droves at launch. They didn't care that it didn't have everything that they ever wanted in it. They were going to buy that game anyway. It sold like crazy before we had the 1.5 and the version 2 updates.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think there's a difference between that because I think like Pokemon Snap was a similar thing where like the people that wanted it got it and were happy to get more, but like I don't know, I think the narrative around that game being like content light was not as prevalent. Like it was certainly a thing people talked about, but there was a huge contingency of people who were like, nope, I'm satisfied with what's here and extra is great, right? But like I don't know, like looking at like the user score on Metacritic around this game, it seems like there's a pretty strong consensus where it's like there's not really enough here, and it feels like a lot to ask for what is a in some ways inferior version of a game that we bought in 2006, or 5.
Yeah.
Most people didn't even buy that game in 2005. It came included.
Right, and that's the thing is, right, like if that game had been a full price game, would it have been as popular? Would it have been as ubiquitous? No, probably not, right? And I think...
Well, maybe because it was also a different time where this was like a very new type of technology for people in gaming.
And
I don't know about that though, because like they didn't pack it in Japan, and the sales figures there, like on that game, obviously significantly different
way
to
different.
the figures like we got in the West.
And I think that's the thing though, right? Is like with that point in mind, Chuy, I think it's even more egregious to put out what is, I think, arguably an overpriced version of this game when it's no longer novel, right? Like this was the hotness in 2005, 2006. It's 20 years later, right? Like I'm not impressed by you giving me what is essentially a feature light version of the same game. Like that's not a good look. And like if it had come out and it had had all of the games from the original plus another 5 or 10 and there was like a ton of content, sure. Like I think there is a place for a Switch Sports in 2022, but like I think it needed to be a more attractive package out of the gate, and the idea of being like, yeah, buy it now and golf's going to come and then maybe other things will, it's like, no thanks. I'm good.
Yeah. And I think like the difficulty there too is like this is very much obviously a game that I feel is like targeting a certain type of audience, a certain demographic, and to me, I'm like looking at it as like kind of recapturing as much of the Wii success as possible with it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if Nintendo could easily, and I'm sure maybe they've thought about this, but like this is motion control gaming is kind of like peaking here at sports. It peaked at sports already and just hasn't gone beyond anything to do anything different. I'd say the only standout for me is like WarioWare Smooth Moves, where things are like, oh, this is a really interesting, cool way to play with like motion controls and stuff. But like beyond that, it's just like, I guess the audience, unfortunately, that they're going for is like going to connect with something real world that they can relate it back to. And I guess the audience that they consider quote unquote gamers or so, they're not, I think overall they feel like, oh, people aren't really into this motion control thing and we're not going to develop games dedicated to this style, especially in a world where they kind of already did that too.
Yeah,
like they had their
It feels like a retread.
Dedicated. Yeah. I don't think I want dedicated games. The best experiences I've had with motion controls are when they are thoughtfully integrated into core gaming experiences, like Cappy in Mario Odyssey, for example. It feels so nice to just like flick your Joy-Con and you just see the hat like motion like swinging out as you're like as your hand swings out. It's so satisfying.
That's so funny. I turn all that shit off wherever I can.
That was the exclusive way I played Mario Odyssey. I played it docked. like 80% of the time because I absolutely adored doing the hat motion.
Hmm.
And it made the game easier. Like you would swing it out and you could then like jump on the hat and like you could do things that you couldn't necessarily do as easy with like a button combination. It freed your hand up to use other buttons at the exact same time you were doing that swinging motion.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know. I I feel like I agree with Chewy where like I just feel like motion controls are not they're not really a thing people want anymore, and it's like that its time has come and gone, and it's like if you're
I
gonna
agree
do
with that.
it, I think this is the way to do it where it is a dedicated experience and like that's the game. But like looking at this, I'm like,
I'd say beyond that, where I see motion controls actually thriving is just VR, right?
sure.
And
Yes.
Nintendo's not
And
working on that at all,
yeah, because
outside of like
but
Labo.
that only works because it's like in
You're
an
there.
8-way. You're like in, you can push it backwards and forwards, and like it's in 3D space.
Hmm.
Whereas the Joy-Con have no idea where they are. They're just like dumb 4-way control. Like I can just, pan it left and right and pan it back and forth, and that's it. The only other real good application that I'm surprised to like, I guess it was maybe not even considered motion control, but like gyro aim. I feel like
Hmm.
that came out of motion control and like the whole 6-axis thing with the PS3 and then like trying to integrate it and stuff. I feel like gyro aim has become more and more prevalent and more integrated into games, and I'm obsessed with it. Apart from on Splatoon, I don't like Splatoon's implementation,
It's the
but I think
best.
I disagree. I hate that it takes over the stick. But I love gyro
It's
aim
one
as like a
axis
way
of
to
the
do like
stick.
fine movements. Yeah, that's the thing I can't
It's
do
one
on that one
axis.
axis. I really hope they change it in Splatoon 3 and give me like let me have
They should.
full use
Well,
of
I
the
agree with
axis.
you there. I feel like they should let you customize that at minimum. Like, if you want both the axes on, like have them on, and if you, I'm so used to it at this point with just having the left and right motion with the stick that I don't know if I could go back to having also the up and down. So, if you could turn that off or on, I think that'd be probably the best for most players.
Uh, yeah, I hate that stuff. I really do. I turn it off immediately on any game that tries to get me to do that junk.
Oh, please try it again,
And
Pete.
this is why you haven't gotten to B minus
That's
and been able to play with
that's
us.
probably true.
Wow.
That's probably true. But I just I hate it. I think it's so fiddly and clumsy. It's like I'm very used to like being able to just hold a controller and move around and like I like
Let's say it was like you move around exactly as normal, and then for like a fine correction, like someone's moving, you just moved to do that fine correction. Like that's what I want out of Splatoon.
yeah.
Splatoon, my issue with Splatoon is it's the whole up and down is me moving the device or the controller,
I
and
find it to be
I just
so
can't get
hard
used
to
to it.
deal with. Yeah, cuz it's very much like okay, so I need to like hold my hands perfectly flat while I'm playing and it's I don't know, it's so fiddly. It doesn't work for me. And I just broadly feel that way about motion controls. I really feel like Wii Sports is like the only game that uses motion controls that I've ever been like, "Yep, this is good. This is a better
But even
experience."
then, like Wii
I need you to
Sports
play
didn't.
smooth moves, dang it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Wii Sports didn't get to where they wanted it to be though, right? They had to do. They then came back with Wii Sports Resort and the Wii Promotion or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
Um,
Those games
and
are
like
fine. I don't think they're as good as Wii Sports.
no, they're not. But I do wonder if that's where like Nintendo Switch Sports should have gone. Like more of the like resort style, more of the fleshed out games, more of the ones that use gyro and use the
Mhm.
Joy Cons for the features that they offer.
It should have had all of
Like
that.
where's the stuff with like the IR sensor? Where's the stuff that uses like HD rumble? Like Wii Sports was designed to demonstrate and show off the Wii remote, and I feel like there was an opportunity here to use all of those things. Like we could have had curling, for example, and
Mhm.
you could push it with the Joy-Con and you could like feel them like clatter as like with the HD rumble as they like hit your like stone. Like there's all sorts of things they
Where's
could
my
have done.
ice cube counting game? Come on. They told
That's
me.
in 1-2 Switch. It's like a great cost
Yeah.
if it's really great if you want to pick it up. You can get it for a full $60. Great value.
Mhm.
Is it
Yeah, I think the sad part, like you're saying, like they're just not building a world around it. Like they're not taking that.
It feels half-baked.
Their tweet earlier today was just like, "Oh, did you know this like red train drives by every 15 minutes?" And I was just like, "That's dumb. That's like, what is this type of world building? I don't. Nobody cares about that." So
Yeah,
that's where they miss with it for sure.
And it's like, it feels like they also could have like maybe gone like the Nintendo Land route, right? Where it's like maybe you theme some of these things around existing Nintendo properties, or you have Nintendo characters be playable, like anything to sweeten the pot a little bit.
I think I would prefer they went down the Splatoon route, especially if you're like earning things, right? I want to be able to like win specific fake brands, and like those brands give me like specific buffs that I can then get better in sports. If I like unlock this specific thing, I want to wear this when I'm playing soccer because it makes me like a better player. Maybe it makes me a little like 10% faster or something. Like there's a lot of things they could have done to flesh out the experience.
It's funny you mentioned that because I did just unlock like a new tennis racket and a new like volleyball. I don't know if they have any effect on the game, but it is like something that's kind of there.
Okay. I just always loved the way Splatoon did it with the branding. I just thought it was so cool. Like
but that's what I'm saying. Like Splatoon has some world building to it. Like that world is so rich and deep of like just lore and stuff and characters and everything. So like that's still just going to be the part that's like missing with it. But I do think that like maybe the sports mates are a little bit in that direction where I'm like, cool, like here's the glow up, you look a little bit better and that sort of thing. But like, I don't know, there's still no attachment there. There's no like
I don't
story
think,
mode or something.
I don't think that like getting cosmetics for a generic player character is enough for me to motivate me to play a game. You know, like I have to want to play it, and right, like where it's like with Splatoon, I think that the value is clear there, right? Where it's like you can customize your Squid Kid, and if you do the Splatfest, you can get like exclusive shirts, and like they have actual tangible impact on how you play, and you can respect things, and like there's a loop there that's satisfying. Whereas like if all you're doing is playing these games to play them for fun and unlock cosmetics, it's like, how much do I care about that? Like in a game that isn't primarily about playing online even to begin with, right? Whereas like with Splatoon, there's something to that, right? Of like,
well, I think they are going for this one.
I'm sorry.
Well, funny enough, like I did like the offline mode. That's not the first option to log into when you go into this game. The base is
the online.
Yeah, the base like
okay.
I don't think you can unlock anything outside of the online. Like I think it's all kind of tied to that.
That's not great.
Yeah, it seems weird, but they do. I think they already like kind of revealed that they don't think this the online's gonna survive very long with it. Like they do pad it here and there with like computer players, right? So
I mean, that's not giving people much faith in the game.
Yeah, that's not much faith at all. Yeah,
day one.
Yeah, so it's already like getting padded with like computer players, but I do think that they intend like the main gameplay experience to be an online one with this.
Okay. That feels like another nail in its coffin if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I'm bummed that this doesn't feel like it's more exciting for the folks that have been really like dying for it, like Mango from the community.
It definitely feels like it landed with a fizzle.
Yeah. And like, especially right now, given that like it's been kind of a relatively quiet period for Nintendo, right? Like Kirby came out and that was great, but like if you're not a Kirby person,
I mean, we should have had Advance Wars in fairness, but
right, but we don't, right? So like for this to be the thing that we're trying to talk about and pay attention to right now, and that like within a week it already is kind of like the biggest story around it is that people are breaking their TVs, not that they love the game. right? That's not great. That's not a great
Mm-hmm.
place to be. And I don't think it speaks to longevity for the game or hopes or a future for the franchise. Like, that all seems like, the odds are increasingly slim, and that's a shame for the folks that were excited for it and invested and showed up day one.
Yeah.
Doesn't inspire a lot
And
of
kind of going
confidence.
back to like Steve's point about preferring it go like more of the Splatoon route for online and stuff too. And I agree with that. Like I think Splatoon's the only game where Nintendo's been really successful with like regular online content updates, but I think it's because like they came out every single month. Like that game for 2 years, just like month after month, had stuff going into it. Whereas like uh Animal Crossing, I think, could work with that style, but they didn't hit that like every month update type of thing. I think if it were monthly, that's just a better timeline in general. With Wii Sports or Switch Sports rather, it's like we're gonna get the next game, I guess, in I don't know what is it, like autumn, November or something like that. I don't remember.
That's a
It's coming
long
too
wait
late.
too.
It's very, very late, and I think that's the thing that's like that's just what's going to be the killer with like Nintendo's online stuff because I mean I don't know, I think with a lot of like service games it's kind of the standard, just like every single month there's something to look forward to, something new, and people get their
Yeah,
fill of that
or
stuff
you go
and
down like the season route, and it's just like this
Mhm.
season, this is what you're gonna get. You lay it all out, and then we know when that season ends, there's gonna be another season, presumably, and then we can see what content we're going to get in that season. And maybe
Yeah.
each season they release a new game, and the tournament
Yeah.
surrounds that game and unlocking new things and like being the best. And maybe whoever is at the top of the leaderboard wins something exclusive.
I feel like this should have
Eh,
been a Nintendo Switch Online thing. They should have made this a game that you get as part of
Pop it in the
Nintendo Switch
expansion
Online,
pack.
and then have the added content be for the expansion pack, where like you get
it's
the
your
base
expansion
experience.
pack bundle
Yeah,
for sure.
you get the
Yeah.
base experience with regular NSO, and then golf, whatever other stuff they want to add. Maybe they bring back boxing or baseball or some of the other
Mhm.
stuff that's been cut. Make that all expansion pack content.
Yeah,
I think that
but
would feel a
I
lot
think
better.
the issue there is like they're still not looking at that expansion pack or their online in general like the Game Pass type of equivalent,
Yeah.
you know. They're not approaching it that way. And I don't know if they will, which is probably I don't know if you want me to segue into the next thing with like
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so basically, we've seen Reggie, his book is coming out, and he had to fight to get Wii Sports included as a bundle with the Wii, which ultimately, looking back, is the right choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like you can see that there's that, I don't want to say lack of vision, but I mean you can see a lot of changes in the way that Nintendo is being managed now versus the Reggie Iwata era, right? So the event that we're talking about here, right? Like Reggie fighting to get Wii Sports included. There is a article over in the Washington Post from Launcher, which is their video game imprint, where it's like an excerpt from Disrupting the Game from the Bronx to the Top of Nintendo, which is Reggie's new book, which is available now.
Terrible name.
Yeah, you could have called it something better, I think. But this excerpt from the Washington Post was like making the rounds today, and definitely I think surprised a lot of people, because it's one of those things that like now you look at it and it's like such an obvious success story to think that Reggie had to fight for it. It's an interesting tidbit, and I think it gives you a good amount of insight into some of the differences from the way that Nintendo of America might think about things versus Nintendo proper. But I did want to get just a couple, like read a quick excerpt from it. We'll link to the full thing below, but I thought this was interesting. So Reggie said, I advocated packing Wii Sports with Wii so that every consumer would get access to this great content. After I made the suggestion, Mr. Iwata paused long enough for me to notice the faint buzz of the incandescent lighting in his office and get uncomfortable. Reggie, Mr. Iwata said, Nintendo does not give away precious content for free. We work hard to create special experiences. It is unique software that motivates consumers to buy our hardware, and we expect to sell these games over extended periods of time. No, we should not pack in Wii Sports. Mr. Iwata, I understand the value of our software. I know unique software has always differentiated Nintendo, but we know that the Wii is a very different concept in the history of video games. Wii focuses on unique gameplay. The goal of Wii is to expand gaming from its current niche to a mass market medium. Wii Sports has the power to do this. Wii Sports can be a unifying element for all players of the system and a key motivation for people to buy the system and have fun immediately. Plus, Mr. Iwata, I know Nintendo has a history of using packed-in software to drive a system. And it's interesting because he kind of goes on to talk about, how there were multiple meetings that came after the fact. Miyamoto was like very upset by this suggestion initially. And they ended up...
I love the fact that like he went to go see Miyamoto, like they had invited him over, and it wasn't to like have a meeting with Miyamoto, it was so he could show him a new game, because he was just like, no, there's no fucking way you have a Wii Sports. It's
right.
So funny.
Which was very funny, right? So Miyamoto has him look at Wii Play, which we know eventually came out and was packaged with additional Joy-Cons and was kind of this additional pack-in experience you could get access to, and it was a way for them to kind of backdoor more Wiimotes into people's houses. And it's funny because, Reggie basically was like, yeah, this is great, but it's not as good as Wii Sports. It's not as complete an experience. And he makes this suggestion we should also bundle that. And kind of insane that he got both of these over when every other person who is a decision maker at Nintendo was like, I don't think so, Reggie. But this bit is good, where he's talking about when it actually gets approved. And it's he says, I watched Mr. Iwata and Mr. Miyamoto's faces and then heard the translation into English. Reggie is right. Wii Sports does a much better job to achieve our objective of getting consumers to understand Wii immediately. And this minigame collection is not a fully formed game that will command full price in our market. We should think about how to best use this software to achieve our objectives, including this with the Wii Remote accessory is unconventional, but it would get more Wii Remotes in the hands of our consumers. And it's... Actually, I want to read one more quote. This is what Miyamoto responded to us because it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that's the best. It's absolute best.
It says here, so now Mike and I were trying to get agreement on 2 different bundles, and the world's best game designer was not happy. The ever-present smile and impish squint of Mr. Miyamoto's eyes were gone. Neither of you understands the challenges of creating software that people love to play. This is something we constantly push ourselves to do. We do not give away our software.
Can you imagine just like pissing off Miyamoto that much that he's basically just like, you have no fucking...
And you're like new blood, right? Like you're new, and it's like the godfather of video games. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Is hilarious. It's truly hilarious, and it speaks, I think, to Reggie's confidence as a leader, that he was willing to be like, nah, I don't care.
And I think it's only because of like his success with launching the DS. Like he says earlier in the piece that he managed to convince them prior to this meeting to launch the Wii in North America first, because they'd had some massive success with the DS there and wanted to capitalize on that. I think if that launch had failed, there's absolutely no way he would have been able to get this as a pack-in title.
And it's funny because so they agreed, and you mentioned this earlier, Steve, they agreed to pack it in all the Western markets, but it was a standalone software in Japan. And this is the last quote we'll read here. This ended up being a perfect test of the different approaches. We broke records globally, but it performed the best in the Americas and Europe. It was in these markets that we had the phenomenon of Wii Sports competitions in bars, nursing homes, and on cruise ships. Including the software and the overall Wii proposition had been a courageous decision and the right one. Very interesting, because it speaks to how sometimes being bold and making an unconventional choice is the right thing to do. And I compare that to this launch, and it's like, you had so many other things you could have done, right? Whether it was making it more complete, whether it was, being brave enough to make it something that came with NSO or a pack-in title years ago, any of those kinds of things. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to see that difference here,
Yeah. I mean, because I wonder, like, Wii Sports, to me, has this quirkiness. It has the Mii characters. It has, like, a lot of, like, just character to it that I think is very friendly and approachable with stuff. And thinking back to Nintendo's position at the beginning of the Switch, coming out of the Wii U, it's not in a place where they're seen very positively by the public.
Yeah.
Gamers are the sentiment from gamers is basically like, Nintendo just make games for other consoles. The sentiment from other people, their audience that has lived them since the Wii, is just like, we have the Wii already, like, this is what we wanted. And so at that point I'm like, I kind of get them not packing it in. I mean, 1-2 Switch. We're talking about 1-2 Switch here.
Right.
1-2 Switch was not a pack-in game. And I get it to some extent, because it's like, who wants that? It's like, it's going to fill landfills, basically.
But I guess that's like, why even make that
could have been a
probably
digital
not
one.
so interested. A digital one, yeah, probably fine. But at the same time, it's like, I don't see how much interest there would be around it, especially with the audience they're trying to get to.
I booted up my PS5 for the first time, right? And I'm playing Astro's Playroom. It's like, you are blown away and amazed by what that controller can do by the game that you play with it. And it's just like, whoa, shit, I can feel all the stuff. Like, it teaches you about the triggers. You had the perfect time to demonstrate all of the cool things that the Joy-Con could do, demonstrate HD rumble, show off the IR motion thing, and they didn't do it, like, because no one bought 1-2 Switch, because it was overpriced compared to the Breath of the Wild, and all anyone wanted to play was Zelda. But if it was a free game, like, it didn't need to be as fleshed out as it was if it was free. That they could have had like 5 little mini games on there that showed you how the controller worked, and then it was gone. Like, they've done this before. Remember that skip rope game that almost got delisted and then it stayed? It's just like, why not do something like that?
Yeah. And I think that's the difference for me there. Like, 1-2 Switch to me just isn't cute. Like, I look at Astro and I'm like, this is adorable. This looks great. Like, it just looks like you're going to smile when you see it. But 1-2 Switch felt like a little bit of a half measure thing from Nintendo, where it's like, we're trying to be cool and
it was almost like a WarioWare vibe, but not quite there.
And that's the thing is, I feel like it's interesting, because I think the point that you're making, Chuy, makes a lot of sense, right? The whole, like, Nintendo was trying to change the narrative with the Switch. They were trying to appeal to hardcore gamers. They were trying to show that, they were still the Nintendo that we knew before the Wii, right? And that they're not just the family-friendly, casual market thing now, right? And, like, great. But then it's like, why even make these games then, right? Like, if you're going to half-ass them, if you're not going to commit to making them the best version of what they can be, why even serve that market at all, right? Because, like, I think there is a version of Switch Sports that people are excited about in 2022. I just don't think this is it. And, like, if you weren't going to put in the development resources to flesh it out as much as it needed to be fleshed out, why make it at all?
I think the answer there is there's just no third-party support for them at that point in time. It took like a good 2 years before other people started hopping onto the console and going like, oh, okay, this is like a viable place for my game to live. Let me go and do that, And they
did get commitment pre-launch though for some big games, like Skyrim was in that initial launch trailer. And but
think about,
it's like, shit, Bethesda's coming to a Nintendo console for the first time ever.
Sure, but think about what it was like at the dawn of the Wii U. There was some conversation there. It's like, oh, Ubisoft is making an exclusive game. Oh, like there.
Yeah.
I do think that the context that Chuy is bringing up is very, like, important, because
100%.
it was
And
a
I can
very
also
different
see,
Nintendo.
yeah, and I can also see that's why they wouldn't want to do a Wii Sports competitor that early on, because it's kind of still got that stink of the Wii U around it, and it's just like, do we really want to carry on doing that when we've just launched like the biggest Zelda game ever? We're about to launch the massive Mario game. We've got Splatoon for the like core gaming audience. I can 100% agree with Chewy that they wanted to get away from that kind of casual audience. What's so strange for me about Switch Sports in that regard is like they've got all of these Switch Lights out in the wild now, and you just can't play
Yeah.
the game on it. It tells you to dock the game, and it's just like, nope, I can't do that with this console. So I don't know really why it doesn't work in tabletop mode.
I'm gonna put it out there right now. I think the Switch Lights look great, but just the fact that they took away the namesake of the Switch, basically, the fact that it switches is just like it's a real hindrance for that console. Like,
Mm.
I don't know. I like the look of it. I like the idea of it, but I also don't like the idea of it at all. I think it's just like, why bother with that one?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's unfortunately where I come down on it. It's like, I don't know. I feel like Nintendo has established themselves enough now with the Switch of like, we know what we're doing. We're making games for gamers, and we've locked that audience down again. And now in these attempts to kind of recapture some of that magic from the Wii era, it just feels like every attempt we've seen at that has been a misstep, and like they're not, for whatever reason, they're not fully committed to that style of game anymore, but they still want to put them out and try to like, oh, is this anything? Let's throw this one at the wall and see if it sticks, right? And like we've seen them go back to the well on some of those older ideas, like, Switch Sports and Brain Age and that kind of stuff. And like they're not hitting the way that they used to. And I think part of that is that the market has changed, and like those kinds of experiences are now more common in other places. You can get Brain Teaser app on your phone. You can, play other kinds of experiences that kind of used to be you only got them on the Wii or the DS, right? And like I just don't think that they're as fresh or as novel anymore. And if Nintendo wants games like this to hit, they need to commit to really evolving the formula and making them feel fresh again in the same way that they did with their first party, like traditional games, right? Like you almost need the same level of it. And, this is like such an overdone term at this point, but right. You need that Breath of the Wild for Wii Sports. You can't just like do a lesser version of a thing you've already done and been like, is this good? Is this good for you? It's not.
Yeah.
Right? It's just not.
I think of it in terms of like, what is the production schedule here in the background with Nintendo? Because I don't know, trying to look at their whole company as a whole. Obviously, like video games front and center, that's what they have. The Switch right now is their console and stuff. And it just makes me feel like, what is going on in the background that's like, because they're constantly planning for the future. They're constantly doing R&D for what's next and stuff. And right now we know a lot of the schedule that's coming up as far as games go. And we know what they've been telling investors at the moment is like, we're halfway through the Switch. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what does that mean? What it means to me is like I'm looking at what's upcoming: Zelda, Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3. I mean, Splatoon 3, I'm like, okay, there's probably going to be some support for this, very similar to Splatoon 2. That's kind of a thing. They've given us a roadmap for Mario Kart DLC, but I'm like, okay, so there's stuff they have to fit in between here. And why they're doing this is, to me, is just saying like, okay, they're still working on this next console. There's still R&D going into this next console. They're delaying that. They're basically like, pumping out what they can to fit there, without playing their huge like Mario cards right
and like,
now.
I respect that, but it is a thing we've seen them do before to the detriment of IP that they've established, and that's frustrating because this to me feels very similar to like Star Fox, what was it? Zero Assault? The Wii U one.
Star Fox Zero, yeah.
Zero.
Yeah.
And then there was the other, like, Guard or something, whatever. That was like the...
I think it was Star Fox Guard, yeah.
And, like, short-term stopgaps are not worth damaging an IP, you know? And, like, this is a game that I think, and now, you know, talking about Switch Sports again, it's a game that clearly would have benefited from a little bit more time, right?
Oh, yeah. It feels like they needed to fill a spot on their schedule, and so they were just like, okay, what's not ready? Golf. Let's cut that. Can we get the rest of the games to a state where we're ready to launch by X date? Okay, let's get it out and let's fill in this spot. Because we've already seen them do a switch with Xenoblade and Splatoon this year. So it's just like, it feels like something went wrong in scheduling with a delay or something, and like they needed something to fill the spot because nothing else was coming out.
That's how it feels, and you know, that's speculation, right? Grain of salt, but
and I think the frustrating part about that for me is just like, right now, more than ever, people are calling for their old games, their old experiences on the NES, the SNES, the N64, and just still, it's just like a little tiny trickle coming out of the faucet here.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel. There's like so many big hitters that are still missing, and they're just putting games out that no one's heard of or cares about.
So I don't know why they look at it this way, because that easily brings interest to their online infrastructure. That brings interest into what the expansion pack does, or the pass, I guess. Why didn't they go with pack? Come on, Nintendo. And I feel like they're just like missing out on an opportunity to build their online even further and like really just solidify like, hey, this stuff is going to be available for you if you get into our infrastructure and just like keep paying for it. Like that's, I don't know. They're just like leaving the money there, and there's just so much more focused on like, here's this new kind of like, you know, it's an experience. It's something you can play in the meantime while the big games come out. But when they could just like easily fall back to bringing back some of the older games, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems it's odd. It's odd, frankly, to need to fill space and not leverage old IP and old games that you could just port, and rather than like half baking this game that is a sequel that people have been asking for multiple decades now. It feels like a missed opportunity, you know, and one that unfortunately, you know, it feels like Nintendo Switch Sports is going to be a casualty of. But I am excited to read Reggie's book.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to read Reggie's book. I need to pick it up. Do you know what? This thing is going to be one where I do the audiobook, so I really want Reggie to read it to me.
Did he read the audiobook? Is that true?
He reads it, so yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm in. I'll get the audiobook.
I think I'm doing the audiobook because I want him to read it to me.
Me too. That sounds great.
I just miss hearing him. He was always so much fun.
He was so great. I loved Reggie. I really want to meet him in person. Have you seen the Reggie badges he's given out to people? Whenever he sees them, you can ask him for a Reggie badge.
What is he, a pilot? He's giving you the wings? Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
that's all I want now. That's all I want.
He's definitely one of those people. Like, if I, it's like, oh, if you could have, dinner with like any like he'd be on the short list for me of somebody I would love to have a chat with.
And this story is like, going back to his story too that he just told, like everything I've heard about like working with Nintendo, very traditional Japanese company, is like, this is mind-blowing to me, because the culture there, the business culture there is like, if one person disagrees with like emotion, like everybody will decide not to do it because they don't want to like, disrespect that idea and stuff. Like, it has to be unanimous on so many things. So to know that like he was able to push this bundle is
will
just like
stuff into existence.
That's not an easy thing to do in a 100-year-old company,
Especially when you're the representative of the American arm of a Japanese company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, and you're the new guy, no less. It's like, who the hell is this guy? And it's like, well,
that is such a rarity. So I'm definitely picking this up. I can't wait to hear stuff like that.
Agreed. So, definitely let us know your thoughts if you've been playing Nintendo Switch Sports, if you have been reading Reggie's book. Write in. Let us know your thoughts on either of them. I'd love to hear from you, the listener. Remember, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. You can hit us up at questions@flipscreen.games. You can join our Discord, where we have a thread every week getting questions for the show, or you can hit us up on social media, Flipscreen Games on Twitter. Write in however you can. I saw something there, Chuy. You got something else to say?
Oh, Steve sent the pins. They're amazing. I
I'll have to check that out. All right, so remember, if you want to get links to all the other places you can find us on the web, including our Patreon, where you can go and become a Patreon producer, get access to our exclusive content, or get early access to this and the Flipscreen Games podcast, head over to flipscreen.games, and wherever you choose to engage, we appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Nintendo Noise. I've been Pete. My cat's standing in the way of my confidence monitor. I don't know who's that. He's been Chuy, and he's been Steve, okay? At some point, I think I probably got that right. So, anyway, we'll see you next week, baby!